Hello and welcome to this meeting of the Council of the Town of Oakville. I would invite everybody to join Council in O Canada. Thank you, everybody. 210 years ago, Indigenous people here began welcoming settlers from all over the British Empire. Soon, they were helping slaves escaping from the United States to settle here too. Today, our Indigenous founding partners are still here, enjoying this land with us. They fish and camp under their Treaty 22 rights. Indigenous people in their thousands also live with us as neighbors and friends. Our Indigenous white and Black settlers created a community with an attractive degree of harmony and prosperity, and in 1857, Ontario gave official recognition of Oakville as a town. At Town Hall 160 years later, we fly the flag of the Mississaugas of the Credit beside the flags of Oakville, Ontario, and Canada. We fly these flags together to acknowledge our origins. People from all over the world are attracted to the livability we are creating. We offer newcomers a warm spirit of welcome. We offer everyone our founding story, so everyone knows what we are a part of. We feel sorrow and distress for acts of racism and intolerance that are suffered across Canada and here at home. We want our future to be equitable and inclusive for all. The path of truth and reconciliation can unite us all. Please keep well, stay safe, and let us know of any chance to be helpful. And please let us know anytime that you can help increase Oakville's harmony, prosperity, and livability. Madam Clerk, do we have any regrets for this evening?
We have no regrets this evening.
Are there any declarations of pecuniary interest, Council? Madam Clerk, I hope I'm not speaking too soon, but I see none. Council, we have the minutes of several meetings in front of us, and I have a motion by Councillor Haslett-Deal, seconded by Councillor Giddings, that the minutes of the regular session of Council dated October 18th be approved as revised to amend recommendation 2D of item 9.2, Neighborhood Traffic Safety Program, to remove, quote, on Devon Road from Morrison Road to Elmhurst Avenue, unquote, and replace it with, quote, on Devon Road from Morrison Road to Ford Drive, unquote. Second, that the minutes of the special session of Council dated October 19th be approved. And third, that the minutes of the Planning and Development session of Council dated November 1st be approved. Is there any objection to this motion? Madam Clerk, there being no objection, that motion carries. Council, would two of you give us a motion to go into committee of the whole? Councillor Dudek, Councillor Longo, thank you. Is there an objection? Madam Clerk, there being no objection, we are resolved into committee of the whole. Council, there are a few consent items in front of us. Items 7.1, 7.2, and confidential consent item 8.1. Is there a mover for the consent items? Councillor Chisholm, thank you. Is there an objection to the motion? Madam Clerk, there being no objection, the consent items are consented to. We now have several discussion items, and the first is our COVID update from the CAO. And Madam CAO, you have the floor.
Mayor and members of council, over the last few weeks, we've unfortunately seen the number of COVID cases increasing, ranging in magnitude to 500 to 600 cases each day. There was an expectation as we moved indoors that we would see those cases increase, and indeed we have. Last week, the announcement from the Provincial Science Advisory Table noted that within several of the public health units, the positivity rate was increasing, and that the immediate future for us was relatively uncertain as we move into the indoor winter season and the flu season as well. The recent pause that the province put in place just last week, not proceeding with the capacity limit removals for the remaining high-risk areas, the science table had concluded was prudent and necessary as we move into this next phase. The province is going to continue to monitor for the next 28 days all the health indicators to see how they move forward from there. Vaccinations continues to be the most effective measure to protect our community. The vaccination rates in Ontario, which are very similar to Halton, are 86% fully vaccinated and 89% having about the first dosage. We do have the third dosage on the region's website. It identifies the people that are eligible for that booster shot. So that's very good news, particularly for a lot of the long-term care facilities. We do always need to remember that the vaccination is not the perfect solution. It certainly is a good solution, but we still may get the COVID-19. But it makes us more likely to have very mild cases, which is evident when you look at the percentage of people in the ICU units. It's very low for those that are vaccinated. So the health protection measures that have been in place now must be 20 months pretty well. Wearing masks or distancing, washing our hands, especially with the flu season starting, are very essential. I think sometimes we get a little lax in this as we've carried on for so long, particularly the washing of hands. In terms of town services themselves, town services are returning to the pre-pandemic levels with the restrictions that had come off with the province just a few weeks ago. Our community centers have transitioned to our standard capacity limits in our pools and arenas, our fitness areas, and our gymnasiums. We have reintroduced the seniors programs as well as the preschool drop-in program. So all of those are moving now forward. Wedding ceremonies have also moved indoors, so we are providing for ceremonies in the North Atrium with some limitations on attendance and proof of vaccination when they're entering Town Hall. In terms of staff, we are beginning to bring back in those staff who had been working remotely. They are returning into the office. Each day you'll see more and more people in our offices. We are, though, phasing in the return to work just to make sure that we can accommodate staff in a safe way as we move back in. The phasing is all based on operational requirements, and we anticipate by actually the beginning of the year we should be fully transitioned. Remote work will still be a part of our benefit or package going forward, but again, it is all dependent on our operational requirements. So that includes my relatively short update today, and I'd be more than happy to answer any questions.
Question, councillors? A motion to receive. Councillor Knoll, thank you. Any objection? There being none, that motion carries. Thank you, Madam CAO. All right, Council, the next item is the sign face area review for our sign bylaw, and we have a registered delegation in the person of Russell Cheeseman. Madam Clerk, do you want to call the delegation? As Council will know, this is a carryover item from the Council meeting a month ago.
Mr. Cheeseman, if you're there, we're waiting to hear from you.
There he is.
Good evening, Your Worship and members of council.
Good evening.
I am here to speak to the matter that's before you tonight, the amendment to the signed bylaw. I can advise council that my clients and his representatives met with members of town staff to go over the wording and the various amendments that are being proposed. We even as late as last Friday sent some suggestions to the to Mr. Barry, who had his staff look them over and agree to them. He indicated to me today by email that those final amendments would be placed before you tonight at council, and I'm assuming that they have been, and because I don't see them anywhere on the website, so I'm taking him at his word at that, and I'm saying that I'm here tonight to say we're happy with the way that this whole matter has proceeded, and happy with the bylaw as it now sits before you. And we'd like to express our gratitude to Mr. Barry and town staff working cooperatively to bring this matter finally to an end.
Thank you, Mr. Cheeseman. I can assure you that the changes are before us in red line, so thank you very much for your information. Council, is there a motion? Councillor Giddings, thank you. Is there an objection to the motion? There being no objection, that carries, and thank you, everybody, for getting to a happy ending to this story. Thank you, Mr. Cheeseman.
Thank you, sir.
Council, there's a presentation if you need it for the Sheldon Creek Flood Mitigation Opportunities Study, but it's a very straightforward matter. Can I look for a motion first? Councillor Robertson, thank you. Is there an objection to the motion? Madam Clerk, there being no objection, that carries. Thank you, Councillor Robertson. Now we turn to perhaps one of the meatiest parts of tonight's meeting, and that is the 2021 Audit Planning Report. Jonathan Vander Heiden, the Director of Finance and Deputy Treasurer, is going to introduce KPMG, who will describe their audit work plan. Mr. Vander Heiden, you have the floor.
Thank you very much. Good evening, Mayor and members of council. Before we turn things over to KPMG, I actually wanted to do a quick introduction to Jade Surgener, who is our Manager of Accounting. Jade joined the town a number of months ago, and I think that most of you have corresponded with her regarding your community and professional development expenses. But I wanted to take the opportunity to introduce her to you as this is her first meeting at council. And Jade has a wealth of experience from both the private sector as well as the public sector from the city of Guelph. And she's already been very active in the ongoing operations of the accounting team, as well as a number of projects, including starting to plan for year end and for the audit. So with that little introduction, I will turn it over to her and then she can introduce our auditors.
Great, thanks, John.
On behalf of
Good
council, Ms. Surgener, welcome, and council looks forward to working with you. Please go ahead.
Thank you. Thanks for the opportunity to introduce the KPMG audit team, who will walk through the 2021 audit process. The town conducts an audit for a number of reasons. One is certainly to have a set of audited financial statements, but we also use this information as the foundation for our ministry reporting, as well as other items such as the town's annual report. Having an independent third party validate the financial results of the town helps us meet our strategic vision of being an accountable government that inspires public confidence through transparency. Tonight, KPMG will walk through their audit plan with you and then return in May to present the findings of their work. At this time, I'll turn the presentation over to Matt Cirdelli, who's the senior manager, and Carlos Alvarez, who is the audit partner on the engagement. But certainly, if you have any questions for staff afterwards, I can help answer those.
Thank you very much, Ms. Surgener. Welcome, KPMG. We look forward to your presentation.
Good evening, and thank you for the warm welcome to you, the mayor and members of council. Matt and I will go through the highlights of the 2021 audit plan. And if we can just begin on the executive summary, and we'll highlight a few matters that we would like to bring to your attention. Certainly, from a high level, I would say that there were very few accounting and auditing changes for 2021. So as we go through the report, you will see a lot of similarities between the current year's audit plan and the audit plan of the prior year. In terms of materiality, just as a reminder, we do set certain thresholds that we use to plan and perform the audit. You can see on this slide on your screen that the materiality has been set at $12.3 million, which is consistent with how we develop these benchmarks under Canadian auditing standards. On the right side of the slide, just in terms of areas of focus, all of the areas that are listed here would be very consistent with what you would have seen in the prior year. Certainly, as the town's financial statements are consolidated, you do have several components, which are listed at the bottom of page 1. And all of these components are very, well, I would say are consistent with the prior year. And with that, we can move on to the next slide. Certainly, as we are still operating under the pandemic, we will update our COVID-related procedures under our auditing standards. And certainly to the extent that you have additional funding for 2021, we will focus our audit on auditing those new agreements, if applicable. One thing that would be new for 2021 is we as a firm of chartered accountants have implemented our own COVID vaccine plan as of October the 1st. So we do require all of our staff to be vaccinated, whether they are working in a KPMG office or at a client location. I say that because when we get to doing the year-end field work, certainly to the extent that you were open to having outside town personnel attend on site, if that is your policy, all of our employees that would attend would be fully vaccinated. Moving along to the next slide. Just as a reminder, our number one focus is audit quality, consistent with Jade's comments in terms of having a fresh set of eyes and being truly independent. I can report to you, the mayor and council, that we as KPMG are independent. We have not provided any other services that would threaten our independence. Moving along to the next slide. Again, this provides some additional highlights in terms of how we determined our materiality. We will present all corrected and uncorrected audit differences to you in May of 2022. Moving along to page 5. Again, in terms of scoping, you can see what we scope in as part of the group audit. And again, these entities would be consistent to what you would have seen in the prior year. Moving along to page 6. There are 2 required risks that we are always required to consider on every audit in Canada. One is the risk associated with revenue recognition, and the second is the risk associated with management override. On this slide, certainly you can see that the first risk is rebuttable. We certainly do audit procedures over all of your revenues. And with respect to management override of controls, that is not rebuttable. So we are specifically required to respond to the risk of management override. And one of the most powerful tools that we use to address that risk is by selecting a sample of manual journal entries based on certain criteria and ensure that there is nothing fictitious or nothing fraudulent based on those journal entries. Moving along to page 7. Just with respect to revenues, which is a key area of audit focus, we will certainly perform all of the procedures we are required to over the revenues using sampling techniques. And of course, we will look to audit any new agreements that would have been entered into in 2021. Moving along to page 8. Certainly one of the most significant balances that you have within your financial statements is the tangible capital assets. Again, certainly we will do procedures over any additions and disposals and recalculation of the depreciation and the amortization. And for one of the other significant liabilities that you have on your financial statements is the post-employment benefit liability. We do rely on your actuary. We do assess reasonableness tests to ensure that the assumptions that are used by the actuary are reasonable and consistent with what we see with other municipalities.
Yes, and I'll just add there, thanks, Carlos. Some of you have seen our presentation in years past. Know that I like to speak to this point. Last year, there was a new auditing standard that came into effect that essentially required us as the auditors of the town to take a look at all material areas of management estimate in greater detail. And this is certainly the one that is at the top of the list when it comes to the town. So we did that in the prior year, and we'll continue to take that very granular focus when we do audit that estimate. I'll also note that this is the third year that management's actuaries will be relying on data that was sent 2 years ago. So we did audit that at the time, noting no issues, and we'll continue to rely on that for this audit. I will note that next year, the town will be due for another full valuation, and we'll have a little bit more work to do with management when that comes, but we don't expect any additional time or effort when auditing this area for the current period.
Moving right along to page 9. In terms of the contaminated sites and asset retirement obligations, the important message for you today is not necessarily what the accounting rules are in 2021, but it is to make you aware of a future accounting standard, which will become effective in 2022. This is a new standard that will require your management team to assess the asset retirement obligations, not only on non-productive and inactive assets, but also with respect to productive and in-use tangible capital assets. So this is a significant accounting change. It will not impact your financial statements for 2021, but certainly will impact you going forward in future years. Moving along to page 10. Again, this just outlines some of the experience of our team members. As you would have been made aware of last year, Lois Ouellette did retire on September the 30th, 2021. I did joke that it was a soft retirement. We in fact have retained her post September 30th, 2021. So she is still acting and supporting KPMG on our municipal clients. Okay. Moving along to page 11. Just in terms of value for fees, I would say that we continue to invest in technology. So we do have some additional technological tools that we will incorporate as part of the audit, just to continue to ensure that our audit is most efficient. Moving along to page 12. Not going to go through the appendices in any detail. The only thing that I would like to highlight, again, on the asset retirement obligations is that we will hold sessions for your management team just to assist them in understanding the implementation hurdles with that new standard. And we will certainly support them on a as-needed basis. So that would be our formal presentation for the 2021 audit plan.
Well, thank you very much. And let's see if your presentation satisfied council. Councillor Gillespie.
Thank you, Your Worship. Mr. Salvarez, my question is, what assurances can you provide regarding KPMG's cybersecurity protocols to prevent any breach of financial information from the town?
As it pertains to how KPMG maintains client data and client information.
Yes.
Certainly, we continue to invest in that area. We have a significant amount of training that we require all of our staff, from the new members of our staff team, straight out of university all the way to partners, in terms of best practices on how to handle information. For example, everything from controlling hardware to email protocols, and certainly from a cyber perspective, this is one of the areas where we're continuing to make significant investments, ensuring that we protect all of our client data. And certainly, if there are any breaches of privacy, certainly we will bring those forward to our clients immediately. And we have specific protocols that we follow in the event of such a case occurring.
Thank you very much.
Well, seeing no other questions, thank you very much, KPMG. We look forward to working with you and hope for a good result. Is there a motion to receive? Councillor Longo, thank you. Is there any objection to the motion? Madam Clerk, there being none, the motion carries. Thank you very much to the Surgeoner and Mr. Van der Heijden and all the good folks, including Lois, in the background softly at KPMG. Council, if I could turn your attention now to the next item, the 2022 council appointments to committees. I have a motion from Councillor Lischina to approve them as presented, except she would like to amend one item on the Development Charges Steering Committee to substitute Councillor Elger's name for her name. The clerk would like us to move that as an amendment to the main motion, so I'm going to put it to you as an amendment, and then we'll put the main motion if that's satisfactory. Is there any objection to Councillor Lischina's amendment? There being none, Madam Clerk, that carries. Is there any objection to Councillor Lischina's main motion? Madam Clerk, there being no objection, that carries too. Thank you, everybody. And I hope everybody enjoys their work assignments in the year ahead. The next item is the former hospital lands RFP for sale of the residential lands and the associated confidential discussion item. And I'm looking for a motion to approve both of them. Councillor Chisholm, thank you. Councillor Haslett-Deal, your questions?
I do have some questions of staff, which I think can be asked in public if that's possible.
You have the floor.
First of all, thank you for the report. It's a long time coming to see the area around the community center and that start to fill in. But I have received some questions and comments about some of the elements of how the project will flow. So my first question is, what measures are in place to ensure that the character of that neighborhood will be protected in terms of architectural design in particular?
Madam CAO, I think this is one for you.
Mayor, members of council, I believe it's in the draft plan conditions, and actually I think Gabe Charles, who's on the screen, can speak to those conditions that are part of the draft plan approval.
Mr. Charles, welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and through you to the councillor. The architectural control process is a condition of the subdivision approval, which requires the applicant to put together principles for the design of the individual lots along or as part of the residential subdivision. And those principles would be based on the existing design guidance that we have in place in terms of our residential guidance, but also in recognizing that the Heritage Conservation District is just to the west of the site as well. So that process would then allow staff to work with the applicant to ensure that the character of the area is maintained, and we would also be using a third-party control architect to ensure that compliance.
Thank you for that. That I think that will help some of the public have a bit more comfort about what will be coming to their neighborhood soon. In terms of timing, I was a bit disappointed that we went to a 10-year time period, but I also recognize that there were some possible reasons why we did that. Can you help the public understand what we can do to encourage, or what potential timelines the successful applicant has indicated they'd be interested in moving forward with?
Mayor and members of council, I think Ryan Maynard is on, and he's probably best to address that.
Mr. Maynard, welcome.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor. The reason for the increase in the time frame was we received some feedback on the initial 2018 RFP that the short timeframes were causing concerns for developers due to the uncertainties in getting their approvals, and potentially if they have to do any environmental cleanup or anything on the lands, the 3 years and the 5-year timeframe were seen as restrictive. And the only way we can enforce those timeframes is through a repurchase agreement, which is it's a very final form of punishment, and it's not something that we want to have to use. So we provided a longer time frame to avoid those risks that were addressed. There was also some concerns that they might want to phase this development. There's some townhomes on the development, and they might want to do the detached dwellings first and then have the townhomes follow later. So those are the reasons for extending the timeframes on the new RFP.
And from your perspective, do you have a sense that the phasing would be in the best interest of the successful developer?
Yeah, it would make sense to do the outside homes first and have that finished and have the internal roads finished before doing the townhomes.
Thank you, Mr. Maynard. Those are my questions.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Giddings.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Maynard, while you're there, the phasing would provide some ease of access for the developer as well, would it not?
Yes, that's correct, because they could do the internal L road first and get that done and use that for the phasing.
All right, thank you very much. Mr. Mayor, I do have one brief question that would best be asked in camera, if that would be all right.
Sure. Let's see. Give us a second here. All right, Council, to assist Councillor Giddings, he is, I'm going to ask him if he's moving that Council retire into a session to exclude the public in accordance with the provisions of the Municipal Act and the Procedure Bylaw for the permitted purposes of considering matters concerning A, the security of the property of the municipality or local board, and F, advice that is subject to solicitor-client privilege, including communications necessary for that purpose. Councillor Giddings, does that capture your intent?
Precisely.
And do you move that?
I certainly do. Thank you.
Councillor, is there any objection to the motion? Madam Clerk, there being none, the motion carries, and I would ask staff to make the necessary technological arrangements for a session closed to the public. And I know from experience it's going to take about 5 minutes, so I'm going to recommend that we resume at 7:15 in the in-camera session, and you take, everyone take a little break. Okay, Council. Referring to the, first for the public, council has met in a session closed to the public as permitted by the Municipal Act and the Code of Conduct to consider advice subject to solicitor-client communications and also to consider a land matter. Now, council, in the agenda, I would like a motion, I'd like a mover for 9.6, the public recommendation. I don't think there's any need to change the wording of that. May I have a mover for that? Councillor Knoll, thank you. Is there an objection? Madam Clerk, there's no objection, that carries. Now, for 10.1, the public recommendation is that the recommendation contained in the confidential report dated November 2nd, 2021 from the legal department be approved in accordance with the direction given in the closed session would be the words I would add to that. Is everybody good with that? All right, if so, I'd like a mover for that. Councillor Hazlitt-Thiel, thank you. Is there an objection to the motion? Madam Clerk, there being no objection, that carries. Thank you, everybody. I think we did some good work there. We have no advisory committee minutes tonight, and believe it or not, we've reached the point where we rise and report to council if we can get a motion. Councillor Grant, thank you for that. Is there an objection? It's not carried. Councillor Grant's motion carries. There was no objection. Councillor Grant's motion carries. So I hope that's not contagious, mixing the words up like that. I rise and report that the Committee of the Whole has met and has made recommendations on consent item 7.1 and 2, confidential consent item 8.1, discussion items 9.1, 9.2, 9.3, 9.4, 9.5, 9.6, and confidential discussion item 10.1, as noted by the clerk. And we need a mover and seconder for this report. Councillor Sandhu and Councillor Palmer, thank you. Any objection? The motion carries. The report is adopted. Council, under new business, we have some things. The first is a notice of motion brought by Councillor O'Meara and Councillor Robertson for the renaming of Bronte Veterans Garden to Ralph Robinson Memorial Veterans Garden. And Councillor Dudek.
Your Worship, I wonder if we could waive the procedural bylaw in order to have it passed this evening.
Well, I'm having trouble imagining anybody objecting to that. I'll consider that you've moved it, and I'll look for a seconder for your motion. Councillor Adams was the first to leap his hand up. Any objection to that? Council, that carries without objection. Councillor O'Meara and Councillor Robertson, would you like to speak to your motion? I think it would be in order.
Well, thank you, Your Worship, and thank you, Councillor Dudek, for doing that. We tried to time it as closely to Remembrance Day as possible, as that was always something that was a very special time for Councillor Robinson, and it was something he took a lot of pride in, and even when he had troubles walking in his later days, he still managed to be in the parade as much as possible. So it was a little bit of a late addition here. So Your Worship, if you might spare me a moment so I can read it out for those who may not have had a moment to read it. Whereas Ralph Robinson served Oakville as a councillor for 11 consecutive terms, a total of 36 years, and worked tirelessly and relentlessly to support Oakville and the community of Bronte. Whereas Ralph Robinson proudly served the community in many capacities, including president of the Minor Oaks Hockey for multiple terms, chair of the Oakville Terry Fox Run across 4 decades, a devoted Oakville Kingsman, and elected as a life member of the Kingsman Club, and having received the Queen's Diamond Jubilee Medal in recognition of his contributions to Canada. Whereas Ralph Robinson's passion, dedication, and enthusiastic support of the students at St. Dominic's Catholic Elementary School led to the creation of the beautiful Bronte Veterans Garden. Therefore, be it resolved that in recognition of Ralph Robinson's outstanding contribution to Oakville and his legacy, particularly in the Bronte community, that Council renamed the Brawny Veterans Garden to be named the Ralph Robinson Memorial Veterans Garden. Ralph worked very, very hard for many years with many families of fallen soldiers, with teachers, with the unions at St. Dominic's to bring that to fruition. It's something that I know he had a particular passion in, and it's an honor for myself and certainly Councillor Robertson to bring this forward tonight. And we thank you very much for your support, Council, and at the appropriate time, I'd ask for a recorded vote.
Thank you, Councillor O'Meara. Councillor Robertson?
I was so blessed to be part of Ralph being at the Memorial Gardens with the St. Dominic's School his final year as a counselor, and to watch the joy he had in doing that service with those children from that school, and the relationship he had with John McPhail, the teacher from the school who really ignited that program. It meant what being a counselor is all about in terms of working with the community and bringing forward good, lasting memorials to what we're all about here. Honoring those soldiers, setting up that garden. Those children, you could just see the delight in their eyes as they went through that. And that's an experience that he made happen, and that, you know, that will last them for a lifetime. So it's a great moment, and we're hoping for next June to meet with those students and actually unveil the sign so that they can be part of it, and it'll be a very special moment for everyone.
Thank you, Councillor Robertson. Shall I put the vote? As I do, I'd like to just acknowledge the many years of friendship that I enjoyed with Councillor Robinson, and that I know many of you did too. Councillor Robinson was always a constructive and positive person. He was a pleasure to work with, and his vast knowledge of the history of our town certainly helped all of us from one time to another over the last many years that we worked with him. Is there an objection to the motion? Madam Clerk, there being none, would you please record all the members of council as in favor of the motion so that the vote is recorded as desired by the councillor? Thank you. Now, Councillor Duddick, can I just make sure that your motion was intended to include the notice of motion for affordable childcare for Oakville families by Councillor Palmer and I believe Councillor Haslett-Deal?
Correct.
Thank you. I'm sure they and I certainly appreciate that. Councillor Palmer, you have the floor.
Thank you, Worship. The pandemic has shown us how essential affordable childcare is to our communities. It also showed us a reality that when we do not have accessible and affordable childcare available, women drop out of the labor force. So many of us have heard from others that the majority, if not all of their paycheck, goes to daycare. The federal government's national child care plan would result in substantial savings for our residents as early as 2022. And this motion calls on our governments to work together to create a plan that will drive economic recovery and support working parents. I believe my colleague, Councillor Haslett-Deal, has a small amendment that she would like to make.
Councillor Haslett-Deal.
So the only amendment I wanted to make was the creation of accessible, quality, affordable childcare spaces, because I think it's important that we include that word. That's the only change, because I think that it speaks very well as a motion to the challenge that families face. And I'm thankful for the opportunity to actually second this. In my career as an HR professional, I've witnessed the incredible financial and emotional stress that families experience all over getting quality, affordable daycare. And while businesses have advanced in their practices to be more flexible, including governments, they continue to experience the loss of just an incredible number of talented team members. And in most instances, it's women. Having an quality, affordable childcare infrastructure enables families to make healthy personal choices, and it is essential to our economy. I hope everyone will encourage our MPPs to know and hear what a positive difference this would make for you, for your families, and most of all for the next generation, because that's really what we get up every day to do, is to support our families and to take care of the next generation.
Thank you, Councillor. Because it's Councillor Palmers and your motion, we can accept it as including the word accessible on your say-so. I don't think we need a separate vote on that unless you wish one. The mover and seconder are okay with the word, is that correct? Well, then let's take it as given. Is there any objection to the motion? Madam Clerk, there is no objection. And at my request, would you please make this a recorded vote also? Thank you. Now, the next thing under new business is, Council, I wanted to share with you that I'm issuing a proclamation about Holodomor Memorial Day. And it reads as follows. Whereas the Government of Canada has enacted the Ukrainian Famine and Genocide Holodomor Memorial Day Act, and whereas the Province of Ontario passed the Holodomor Memorial Act in April 2009, and whereas these acts commemorate the anniversary of the Great Famine of 1932 to 1933, and whereas the Act says that throughout Canada, in each and every year, the fourth Saturday in November shall be known as Ukrainian Famine and Genocide Holodomor Memorial Day, and whereas Oakville has a large Ukrainian population, and on this day we remember the millions of Ukrainians who were starved to death during the Great Famine, many of whom were children. Now therefore, I, as your mayor, do hereby proclaim November 27th as Holodomor Memorial Day in the town of Oakville. Thank you for your attention to this. I would also like, Councillor Lischina would like to speak to this as well. Councillor Lischina, you have the floor.
Thank you, Your Worship. As a member of Council of Ukrainian descent, I'm grateful to you for making this proclamation at tonight's meeting. Many people are unaware of the genocide, and I'd like to take a moment to provide some context. The Ukrainian word Holodomor means murder by starvation. It's inconceivable to think that Ukraine, known as the breadbasket of Europe, would have to worry about feeding its people. But that's exactly what happened in 1932 and 1933. At that time, Ukraine was part of the Soviet Union, and its communist leader, Joseph Stalin, used food as a weapon of war against the Ukrainian people. Under horrifying and unimaginable conditions, up to 10 million men, women, and children perished from starvation. The communist regime even altered official documents and produced propaganda to prevent any news of the Holodomor spreading beyond Ukrainian borders. The extent of the pain experienced by the Ukrainian people is indescribable and will forever haunt not only those who are still surviving with us today, but generations to come. So today, efforts to raise awareness of this tragic genocide against the Ukrainian nation is stronger than ever. The recognition of Holodomor as a famine genocide by the federal and provincial governments and this proclamation tonight at Oakville Town Council will ensure that this tragedy is commemorated and that every effort is made to never repeat this painful history. Від імені Української канадської громади щира подяка вам, пане майоре, за вшановування пам'яті жертви Голодомору геноциду 1932-33 років. May your memory be eternal, вічна пам'ять. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Lischina, for those very moving remarks. Council, I also want to take a moment to congratulate the Hindu community in Oakville on the 30th anniversary celebration yesterday of the Vishnudevi temple on North Brony Road. I attended with Councillor Sandhu and brought greetings on behalf of Councillor Palmer, who could not be present. And I can tell you that I'll call it the congregation, was joyous in their celebration of their achievement all these years. And I think that they were especially happy when I told them, in recognition of their long contribution to the progress of our town, that I have a plan to bring water to the temple. And we will be working with them to make that happen over the next couple of years. As I told them, it's not something that will be able to be done overnight, but it is something that if we work together very hard, we can achieve. And I know I can count on your support as well, because you value their contribution to our community also. So thank you very much for your attention to those remarks. Are there any, we're now at regional reports and question period regarding town boards and advisory committees. Does anyone have anything under this item? Seeing none. Are there any? I'm not aware of any. Oh, Councillor Hazlitt-Deal.
Mayor Burton and council colleagues, I just want to encourage everyone, Hometown Holiday is about to begin in downtown, and the downtown BIA has really put a huge amount of effort into the beautification that will launch this weekend. And I hope to see you on the street. There will be lots to admire. The shops are open, and while all our commercial districts deserve to be shopped this holiday season, Hometown Holiday, I can assure you, will be a home run. And I look forward to seeing you there.
Thank you very much for that. I can tell you that I'm aware of very, very nice holiday plans also for the Brawny BIA and the Kerr Village BIA. So I commend all three Main Street areas of our town to everyone for your time over Christmas and the New Year. I'm not aware of any requests for reports, but if you have any, this is when to bring them forward. Seeing none, I'll ask for a mover and seconder for the bylaws. Councillor Elgar and Councillor Longo, thank you. Any objection? There being none, the bylaws are considered read and adopted as listed in the agenda and revised in the meeting tonight. And with that, that is the end of our work for this meeting. It's been terrific working with you, and I look forward to seeing you again. Good night.